Hello and welcome. It's a few hours after the opinion polls and just 2 days before the results of elections 2024. Now I'm joined here today by Honorable Minister of State for Information Technology, Mr. Rajeev Chandrasekhar. Mr. Chandrasekhar, welcome to Newsline Live.
Thank you.
300 plus seats for the BJP and the NDA in the opinion polls. Is it too early to declare victory yet?
I'm not so sure it's early or late. Certainly the results will come up on June 4th. The exit polls are clearly a confirmation of the widely held belief that the people of India, having seen what Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has done in the last 10 years, wants that momentum to continue, want that progress to continue. Hundreds and thousands and crores of Indians have had their lives transformed. And therefore, it was clear for many of us way back when the elections were being planned and notified that this would be an unprecedented third term for our Prime Minister. That is certainly looking more and more like a reality, and fourth will confirm it. But to the few people who held on to this sliver of hope that somehow their negativity and their misinformation would somehow derail the momentum of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji and the people of India, I certainly think they would be disappointed today, and a lot of their hope shattered, which is not a bad thing, I think, for the country, for people like them and their type of politics to be rejected again by the people of India.
It's a historic third term. It's, I think it's the first time since 1962, 62 years that a government has come back for a third term.
Absolutely right.
Now, the interesting part of the exit polls, they seem to indicate a BJP surge into South India, which was literally the final frontier for your party. How enthused are you by these results? That you could be the largest national party?
I think pre-2024, and 2024 certainly is a historic election in many ways, and will be an historic election on the 4th of June. One is because of the fact that every successive election our Prime Minister has got an increased mandate. That is unprecedented. And he has done this purely on the back of his performance. And the people of India have increasingly, the number of people supporting him have increasingly grown with each election. The second important aspect of these elections are the traditional so-called weak areas for the BJP, the East and the South. This time around, you will see that the BJP is going to be the largest national party, not just in the North and the West, but also in the East and the South. And this takes on a deep irony because the India Alliance, the DMK, Udayanidhi Stalin and all those jokers who had made it their business to build a narrative that somehow the South of India and the BJP are contradictions and will reject the BJP and the Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's development philosophy. I think the numbers and the votes and the seat share will show that BJP will be the largest national party in South India and will grow in Tamil Nadu, will grow in Kerala, will grow, of course, in Karnataka, Andhra and Telangana, and leave all of these so-called narratives in the dust. So it is, you're absolutely right. This is an election where BJP's footprint in the South and the BJP's footprint in the East will dramatically expand.
You yourself are locked in contest in Thiruvananthapuram with a 3-term sitting MP.
Yes.
And it's a very tough fight. Will your commitment to the people of Kerala and Thiruvananthapuram continue irrespective of the results?
Our Prime Minister, the BJP, our government has remained steadfast in that we are committed to development of every Indian, even in states and seats where there is no BJP MP or a BJP government, and that will continue. Our Prime Minister is absolutely committed to Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and I'm hopeful that in Kerala this time the BJP will succeed. The Prime Minister's message of development and individual candidates' efforts on the ground will translate into electoral success. I'm deeply hopeful, and 4th of June we will see.
Now, moving to artificial intelligence, last November you represented India at the AI Safety Summit.
Correct.
And you had the Bletchley Park
Yes.
declaration after that. And the dominant conversation there was on safety and trust.
Yes.
Now, 6 months later, you've finished the largest elections in the world. Do you believe that AI was used to target voters in these elections?
I think it is clear, and there is now evidence spilling out, unfortunately, belatedly post the election, which is a certain degree of irresponsibility on part of these platforms, which needs to be, again, that is a separate issue that needs to be gotten to and discussed. That many political parties in India, or at least some political parties in India, have invested heavily in a strategy that depended on misinformation and therefore deep fakes and AI in the cyberspace to push their political agenda. And the recent revelations by Meta, the recent revelations by OpenAI, that there is the Congress party had, in a sense, heavily invested in using YouTube influencers to push a fake narrative, and that OpenAI, platforms like OpenAI, were being exploited to push deep fakes and misinformation, and then Meta's confirmation that many bots were being used, is certainly disturbing, because it points to overseas interests working perhaps with certain political parties in India and political interests in India, trying to subvert our democracy, which is a extremely dangerous and certainly something that cannot be left unchallenged. And we are the largest democracy in the world. We have almost 66 crore, 670 million Indians who went to polls. And to see that there are these types of technologies at work at a time when 89 crore Indians are connected on the internet, we are the largest country that is a connected country, is certainly disturbing. It is something that we had flagged many months ago. Our Honorable Prime Minister, in the early part of this year, in January, had pointed to the risks of misuse of deepfakes and misuse of AI. And I think the Congress party has proved that these fears were not unfounded. And it is an important issue for all of us to be worried about, as journalists, as public servants, as normal citizens who are engaged politically with their public representatives, that this is a very, very disturbing phenomenon, and it needs to be addressed and addressed decisively.
When you said overseas interests, do you refer to corporations or countries or both?
I think, Sandeep, I mean, you don't have to be a very, very big genius to come to the conclusion that India's rise, India's growth, especially in the last 10 years under Prime Minister, is not being seen very positively by many, many interests. There are inimical interests geopolitically for us, around us, in our neighborhood. There are corporate interests that are who had a free run for 10, 20, 30 years before 2014, who have a reason to trip up India's growth and Prime Minister Narendra Modi's growth. So there are many of these interests, and they sometimes they make for very strange bedfellows and allies. Corporate interests with geopolitical enemies versus terrorists, and all of these types of interests align to try and subvert our democracy. And so we should look at the worst case scenario, and I'm not conspiracy peddling,
right.
Certainly not, but the evidence is out there, and the Congress certainly has tried to use misinformation, as you saw in the case of our Home Minister's video being edited, yes, and morphed, and in my case, images being morphed, etc., to peddle a narrative. So this is a dangerous phenomenon, and it is something that can impact to the heart, at the very core of our democratic process, and it's something that we should not allow and permit, given that we have elections coming up almost every year.
Right. You also mentioned the word belatedly, and OpenAI released the
Yeah,
statement
no,
on
I
Friday.
am extremely disappointed, and I think all of us should be disappointed that these revelations from both Meta and OpenAI came after the elections were almost over.
Last phase of
just before the last phase.
You think they knew all along?
I can't believe that, first of all, that anybody who's trying to trip up the elections would do so only in the 7th phase. First of all, that doesn't make any sense. Right. Second is that I cannot also believe that these platforms who claim to be cutting edge do not notice these kind of influence operations on their platforms, right, using their platforms. So both these, if somebody takes a defense that I only came to know about this on the 30th of May or 31st of May, my response would be that I find that very hard to believe, and they will have to, in some sense, convince the government, the next government, about when did they come to know about this. If they came to know about this earlier, why did they sit on this information? What did they do to mitigate it at that time? Has some actual misinformation and influence operation taken place? If so, where, who, where, what? So these are all questions that need to be asked and answered.
So OpenAI's statement mentions this Zero Zeno and this Stoic, the political campaign management firm in Israel that's behind this. Have you ordered an inquiry into this?
No, look, I have said, look, it is for the next government to decide this and what will happen. And I certainly don't want to second guess that. But certainly, I as the incumbent minister, I have said today that this poses a huge risk to our democracy, and it is something that cannot be left unaddressed, unscrutinized, and uninvestigated, which implies that it must be investigated, scrutinized, and understood
by the next government.
Of course.
And what are the specific laws in the IT Act that this influence operation?
No, currently there is a total prohibition. There is a total ban under the IT rules under 31B5 for any type of misinformation to be present on any platform. And it makes it the legal obligation of the platform to detect misinformation and to remove or prosecute the originators of such misinformation. And so therefore, under the current legislation and the current rules, these platforms will have to pass the test that they did act responsibly or not. And so that is something that the ministry is already taken cognizance of and is working on.
You have a draft framework regulation that due out in July. The next government would possibly look at that. So is this going to be part of that?
No, look, Sandeep, this is a question that has been asked of me in the past and I've answered it. Our legislative framework needs to evolve, and we need to create a new legislative framework. Our IT Act, as you know, is 24 years old, and certainly did not anticipate AI or the internet even. So I think there is an argument that a new comprehensive legislative framework, a draft Digital India bill be prepared that deals with not just the contemporary today's tech ecosystem and all the safety and trust issues and the innovation opportunities, but also about these emerging technologies like AI and all of these other emerging technologies and what safety and trust issues that they represent, as well as the opportunities that need to be pursued. So I think there is a clear argument for a new legislative framework that deals with these things very decisively and puts the obligation of safety and trust on these platforms.
On the platforms. You think it's there's a lot of talk about this 100-day plan of the new government. Yes. Would AI?
I certainly don't. I can't comment on that, and that is something that the Honourable Prime Minister will lay out in front of the country after the 4th of June, and I certainly don't want to comment on that now.
So moving on to cyber fraud. You mentioned we're one of the largest
connected
nations in the world, 80 crore plus people. Now this month, first 4 months of this year, you've seen Indians between January and April defrauded of 1,750 crore, and there have been 7,40,000 complaints of cyber crimes. What mechanism? How do you deal with a wave
cyber frauds? We need again a very comprehensive legal solution for this, because as you know, under our system, law and order is a state subject, and almost 90% of cyber frauds, and I think the number is climbing, are interjurisdictional.
Right.
So you have the criminal sitting in, let us say, in some other country, and the crime is being committed on a victim in one state in India. Or the second scenario is that the criminal is in another state in India, and the crime and the victim are in two different states. Right. So it requires a framework where almost three, at the best case, worst case, three police jurisdictions in our country have to cooperate for cyber crime. Right. This is balance this requirement along with the reality that in many states, their police are still not equipped with basic cyber forensic and cyber investigation capability. Some states are very good. Maharashtra is good, Karnataka is good. But some states don't consider this as a high priority at all. Right. So for many states, this is a victimless type of a crime. It is small amounts, large number of people. So there is a lot of thinking and studying that we have done in the last 1 year on this. It requires obviously a framework for countries to cooperate at one level, and then within India, given that law and order is a state subject, a framework where state polices cooperate on cyber crimes. So it is not trivial, nor is it easy to do, given the way we are organized as a country and given the way the internet is organized. But it's something that we certainly need to address very quickly, given our Prime Minister's commitment for a safe and trusted internet.
So you spoke about this extra-jurisdictional ambit of these crimes. Now, some of these crimes of late, especially this year, the perpetrators seem to be sitting in Southeast Asian countries.
Yes.
Like Cambodia, Thailand, Myanmar. Yes. How do you handle a problem?
No, so that's exactly right. That's the point, which is that, let us say I am a victim in a state of Bihar.
Right.
I'm giving you an example, or I'm a victim in the state of Karnataka or Kerala, and I am the victim of a fishing expedition or a fishing scam by somebody sitting in Cambodia. There are many dynamics here. One is lack of cyber awareness at the individual level, cyber security, the best practices of what to avoid, what not to avoid. So that is one basic issue. The second is the local police. Let us say I'm in Kerala. The local police are more interested in big ticket crimes, high profile crimes. And if you go say I've lost 599 rupees or 1099 rupees, they will laugh you out of the police station. The third sort of a hurdle to be crossed is the fact that now this is suddenly intra-jurisdictional. There are two jurisdictions. There is Kerala and there is Cambodia. Now you can imagine the problems for an SI who's dealing with the DYFI and the SFI on a day-to-day basis. And that type of crime, to be suddenly told I have been fished by somebody sitting in Cambodia. The poor fellow will not know which way to go. So there are a lot of issues to do with policing capacity at the state level, at number one. Number two, these international global partnerships and frameworks that have to evolve to protect citizens in both countries.
Right. So, I mean, could this be the chink in the armor when you're talking of digital India? It
is certainly. I have said this very, very openly, and it is something that we have to accept, that as digitization increases, as more and more citizens use the internet, their individual safety and security vis-a-vis cyber crimes, cyber frauds also increases. Like I said, for different reasons. One is your own personal awareness and knowledge about what to avoid and what not to avoid. The second is the local policing capacity when a crime is reported. And the third is the fact that most of these crimes are multi-jurisdictional crimes, which requires a framework that is missing currently.
Right. And this would be the priority for the next government.
It certainly should be, and it must be. Right. We are already working a lot on this.
So coming back to the states, another aspect of state elections, there are 4 critical state elections coming up in the next 8 months or so. There's Jharkhand, Maharashtra, Haryana, and of course, Delhi in February next year. Your party is in the opposition in 2 states. It's ruling in 2 other states. How critical are these elections for you in terms of?
I think that every election is critical for the people of those states, especially when people today increasingly want a government to deliver, to perform. The expectations are increasingly about politics of performance, and they want a better future for their children. They want better education, better public services, better health, better homes. So I think every election is critical, Sandeep, and our party, our leadership looks at elections as an opportunity to serve the people. Where we are already in power, we go back with what we have done and ask for a renewed mandate. Where we are in the opposition, we go with how we can do a better job than the existing government, and we present our facts and our promises to the people. And I am increasingly confident after being a Lok Sabha candidate myself and having seen on the ground the effect and the impact of Narendra Modi ji's last 10 years, that the only tool today or the only weapon that the opposition has is their campaign of lies and campaign of misinformation, campaign of fear. And as people see through that, increasingly the party of choice, the party that they know will deliver for them politics of performance, is the BJP and the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Right. So this might be a little ahead of the curve, but have you already started preparing for the 2029 elections? And what will your pitch be for 5 years later?
You see, it depends on what you mean by preparation. When our Prime Minister says, I've already got a 100-day agenda, he is a person who has made politics about not wasting a moment and not wasting a day. And if you take that on one hand, and then understand very clearly that every election is a referendum of your report card, is an analysis of your report card. Right. And if you work for 1,865 days, work hard, make sure people are getting the benefits of that work, and that everybody gets it regardless of whether they are region, gender, caste, religion, then you are preparing. You are preparing 1,865 days. We are not the Congress party who surfaces 90 days before the election campaign. Depending on where you are, you wear a Hindu outfit or you wear a Muslim outfit or a Christian outfit, pretend to be things that you are not. That is not our way of working. Right. For us, the campaign starts from the first day that you have a mandate. Right. And that campaign lasts for 1,865 days, which is 365 days times 5. And that is the campaign. It's hard work. It is impacting people's lives, and that report card is what we take to the people.
Right, absolutely. And so your work for June 4th is going to be the kickoff date for 2029. That was Mr. Rajeev Chandrasekhar, Honorable Minister of State for Information Technology. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chandrasekhar.
Thanks.